Dr. Bill here. Today we're going to have a battle of citizen eco drives, and you're invited. Stay tuned. I'll refer to this watch, model number BN0191-55L, as the basic, and this watch, model number CA0710-58L, as the deluxe. Both watches are 200-meter ISO-rated dive watches. The Deluxe has a chrono feature, but it is geared towards diving rather than being a handy timer. I purchased both watches on eBay. The Basic is reconditioned. I paid $109 for it. The Deluxe was a store model. I paid $198 for it. Unlike the Basic, the Deluxe has 3 subdials. The bottom subdial contains the second hand. This subdial is a 24-hour clock, which, while cool, is only of use to mole people or people who are acutely disoriented. This subdial is a 60-minute dial which counts off the elapsed minutes when the stopwatch is activated. Because the Deluxe is first and foremost a dive watch, the top and bottom pushers must be unscrewed first in order to push them. And you must remember, of course, to screw them back in when you're done using the stopwatch. The needle-thin red second counter hand rests at 12 o'clock when not in use. When activated, it counts off elapsed seconds. Citizen deliberately made this hand thin so that it would be unobtrusive, as the Deluxe is primarily meant for diving. The unlocking screws for the pushers are polished and slippery and hard for someone with thick fingers like myself to grip. Using the Deluxe's stopwatch feature is inconvenient, time-consuming, and a little annoying. While not terribly useful or practical, I think the Deluxe's subdials are cool and think its sunburst dial background is really sexy. If you wanted to buy the Deluxe mainly because you liked the dial, I would respect you. The Deluxe and the Basic have the same exact bracelets, both of which are very nice and have very smooth edges. The Basic has a ubiquitous fold-over clasp made of cheap metal that is not very robust. It at least does not have any sharp edges. The Basic's clasp has 3 size adjustment positions. You'll need a spring bar tool like this to size it. It's not hard. The Deluxe's clasp is a fold-over clasp as well, but it is made of sturdier materials and has a glide lock feature. You don't need a tool to adjust the length of this type of clasp. You can change its size by pushing in these levers. The Deluxe's glide lock clasp has 7 size adjustment positions compared to the Basic's 3. I think Citizen could have smoothed this side of the Deluxe's clasp better. The glide lock clasp has very little bulk, and I love it. I'm not sure what type of pins these bracelets use, and sorry, but I'm not going to start hammering into either of these pristine bracelets in order to find out. The Basic can go 6 months without light when fully charged. The Deluxe can go 7 months without light when fully charged. The cases have the same finish, which, while nothing to write home about, is fine. Case integration with the bracelet is pretty poor, but this is to be expected with Citizen at this price point. Both watches have what is probably an aluminum bezel insert. Both watches are 60 click. The markings on each of the bezel inserts differ slightly. The Basic's bezel is thinner and easier to turn. The teeth of both bezels aren't the smoothest feeling bezels around, but I wouldn't describe them as abrasive or sharp. The action of these bezels isn't that smooth, but in the world of 60-click bezels, they are more than adequate. The lume on both watches is superb, as one would expect of Citizen. The lume of both watches was still going strong after being left for 4 hours in darkness. The mineral crystal dial of both watches is fortunately recessed a little below the bezel, which is going to afford some protection to the crystal. Aluminum, however, dents fairly easily. At some point, you're going to scratch or dent the bezel insert. there's a good chance you'll scratch the crystal as well. I'm not a big fan of mineral crystals. I prefer sapphire crystals as they don't scratch. Both watches have screw-down crowns, but they lack the distinctive vacuum seal pop that most dive watches have. There's nothing wrong with the mechanism of these watches. This is just the way Citizen designs some of its watches. These watches are both ISO rated and are watertight. The dates on both watches are only semi-readable by someone like me with poor vision. This is to be expected in a Citizen watch at this price point, as Citizen is run by assholes. Both watches have the same indexes, except where portions of the Deluxe's indexes needed to be chopped off to make room for the subdials. Both watches are very readable and have indexes with reflective edges. Citizen specifies that only the Deluxe has anti-reflective coating, though I don't see a significant difference in either of the crystals' clarity in bright light. Both watches are very readable in bright light as well as normal lighting conditions. The case of the Deluxe is a little larger. Both watches have a diameter of 44.5 millimeters. The case width, including the crown, is 46.5 millimeters for the basic and 47.5 millimeters for the Deluxe. The lug-to-lug of the basic is 49 millimeters and 50 millimeters for the Deluxe. The case thickness of the basic is 12.5 millimeters, which, while not terrible, I think is a millimeter thicker than it should be for a 200-meter solar dive watch. The case thickness of the Deluxe is 14 millimeters, which is pretty thick. You're not going to get the Deluxe under a shirt cuff very easily. Both watches have identical bracelets, and the clasps are the same width. Their dimensions are 22 millimeters, tapering down to 20 millimeters, and then going up to 21.5 millimeters at the clasp. The weight of the basic is 175 grams. I personally wouldn't call this heavy, but when you wear a 175-gram watch, you're always aware that you have something substantial on your wrist. The Deluxe is 191 grams, which I think is venturing into heavy territory. I don't need to size the basic and the Deluxe to tell you how they're going to wear, as I own and am intimately familiar with the discontinued Citizen Courageous model, which has a nearly identical case design to the basic. The case of my Courageous is slightly smaller. The bracelet of my Courageous is identical in size to the basic and the Deluxe. My wrist is about 7 inches. The Courageous, like the basic, is a big watch. The Courageous is the biggest watch that I can possibly wear with reasonable comfort. Citizen has mastered the art of designing overly large watches that somehow magically wear comfortably. This is not the case with the design of the basic or the Deluxe. These watches are going to wear big because they are, in fact, big-ass watches which weren't designed to feel smaller than what they are. I would not recommend that people who have less than 7-inch wrists buy the basic. Keep in mind now that the Deluxe is a little bigger than the basic. I've had enough experience with watches to know that if I sized the Deluxe and wore it around for some time, that the pushers and the crown are going to jab me a lot and that I'm going to get annoyed. I'm not sure how big a wrist you're going to need to wear the Deluxe comfortably, but it's going to be bigger than 7 inches. I have mixed feelings about these watches. The basic overall has substantial quality. I think if it had a sapphire crystal, it would be an easy thumbs up for me. Without a sapphire crystal, I'm not convinced its price is justified. If you look at Amazon's price history for the basic using camelcamel.com, you can see that the price it is selling at now, $315, which seems very expensive to me, is only $7 more than it was when it first appeared on the market in 2017. This suggests to me that the Basic is and has always been overpriced. My recommendation for people who are interested in this watch is to get a reconditioned model. I don't think the Basic is worth anything close to $315. The Deluxe is also of substantial quality, and if it had a sapphire crystal, it would also be an easy thumbs up for me. Unlike the Basic, the Deluxe suffers from having form with questionable function. Do you really want the extra size and weight of a not very easy to use chrono in order to obtain a much sexier dial? I was unable to get a price history for the Deluxe because Amazon isn't selling it right now. Citizen is out of stock for this model. This could be because of supply chain issues. It could also be that Citizen plans to discontinue it. The lowest price that I could find for the Deluxe from an authorized Citizen dealer right now is $296, which isn't terrible, though not great. Unless prices fall for the Deluxe, I recommend, as I did with the Basic, getting a reconditioned model. At the moment, if one wants a simple 3-hand Eco Drive dive watch with a bracelet, the only other option is the Super Titanium model number BN0200-56E, which also has a mineral crystal. I think this is pathetic. Before purchasing either the Basic or the Deluxe, I advise people to strongly consider purchasing the Citizen Promaster GMT instead. I've reviewed this watch in the past. I'll put a link in the description. While the Promaster GMT is hideous, it has an Eco Drive and is an ISO certified dive watch with not only a sapphire crystal, but a glide lock clasp. It is cheaper than the Deluxe, selling right now on Amazon for only $282. Please like, please subscribe, and God bless Switzerland.